wanted to share something about him. I know I can start to say something. I mean, all of us know just what a sweet and loving and generous and faithful, godly man he was. And just for our class, whenever there was a monetary need or any kind of physical issue, anybody needed help with anything, Harris was always behind the scenes taking care of that. Um, you know, I know you all remember our trailer adventure. He just took care of all of the accounting for that, and I know that bicycle fund, I just think that's the greatest idea to name that after him, and I just know several other tax issues. In fact, that's something Harris and I share, is this kind of numbers aptitude or math aptitude. And so anytime anyone would ask me, will you please do my tax return, will you please do this, and if I could not do them, I always referred them to Harris. Yeah. Always. And he was always so willing. He always said yes, and he so exceptionally handled every person. And I mean, we sometimes sent him people that were in just such big trouble, and he just straightened them all out. He just had just really a genius and such a gifting for doing that. And I don't know, some of you probably been blessed by his care. I remember the very first thing when my kids moved from Colorado back here. He knows so many people. He was just calling everyone, trying to find them a place to live. Of course, they ended up with us, but he so wanted to help them find a place. And so, anyway, would anyone else? Oh, Jerry Cavalli and Jenny are praying today, and he said, would you just please let everyone know how inspirational Harris was to me. He said, I've been saved a long, long time, but I really started walking with the Lord, and Harris was there during that time. He was such a beacon of light to me. And he said, I listened to everything Harris said. I think they were in Joe Calvert's Bible study class together. And he says, I just wanted everyone to know what a wise and helpful man he was and how inspirational. So who else would like to share something? Come on, Adeline. I will bring this to you. We'll just pass it around.
Exercise, okay. This has obviously not been prepared ahead of time, and thoughts are going through my head like crazy, but I gotta say something. I can remember first getting to know Carolyn and Harris, and I think it was back when the no, it would have been way back in Sunday school, probably when Bridgewater's. But then I remember the DeLauters, and he was an awesome teacher, and things Harris would say. He would speak up a lot of times in class. And I remember us getting in more than one discussion. I tried to keep up. I'm not as smart as he is, but it was so interesting to me. There was something, that man had a lot of knowledge. He did, a lot more than maybe we have all seen as much. I mean, he knows a lot about the world, just facts, the U.S., about everything. And you could tell he knew what he was talking about, and it was interesting. And I remember asking him questions sometimes, or referring to something he had said, and we'd really get in. And that means a lot now, because now I've known Harris since then as just such a good friend. A very good friend, would do anything for you. And I love it, just now coming in the door right there this morning was hard because Harris is always there. And always smiling real big. Sometimes I think of Carolyn as the smiler. When we see him up there, he might look a little more serious, about what he's doing. But at the door, greeting, he just had the biggest smile on his face the whole time, and just was really gifted at greeting. I thought, wow, it's awesome, Harris. Never missed. They really, unless they were out of town, he did not miss. So just an example of faithful. And loving his wife a lot. You could tell that. They had a good marriage. He loved his wife.
We often sat behind them, and in church, Harris always had his arm around Carolyn.
Oh.
Always.
That's really, I'll probably think of something even more important, but that's enough.
Well, we can pass it back.
Oh, that's all right.
When you think about it, let us know.
No, go ahead.
Okay. My greatest memory is after hurricane came through, Harvey, and the class wanted to adopt a project to help somebody, and they took on the Zarate family. And I don't know what I would have done without Harris and his guidance. It was a lot of money. I mean, we ended up collecting about $35,000, this class did, to buy them a brand new trailer, something they had never owned in their lives. And I mean, being a past administrator of a school, I've dealt with large budgets. But this, I did not know anything about buying a trailer, a house trailer at all. And Harris was my rock. And he helped all of us figure all of that out, the payments, the financing, all of that. And we collected enough money to pay for every penny of that trailer and give them a brand new home. And to this day, it's still one of those gifts that's there every single day for them. And every time I talk to them and when I go visit them, they tell me how much that home means to them. And they were just so blessed that we purchased that home for them. And so it's one of those that keeps giving back. And they give God the glory every single moment for that home. We couldn't have found a nicer, better Christian family to give to. But I loved his jokes. He was always very, very funny. And he always had this twinkle in his eyes, and you never knew what he was going to say next that would make you laugh, And I just appreciate all the guidance he gave me and what he did for our class, and just love Carolyn to pieces. I feel so sorry for her and praying for her broken heart. I can't imagine what she's going through right now. But they've both been such a blessing to this class, and I know to me personally. And he would reach out and help anybody to do whatever needed to be done. And we're going to miss him a lot. And just praying that we can hold Carolyn up and help her in every single way.
I think I can talk loud enough that I don't need this. Oh, gosh. Oh, will you hold it? Okay, so what I'd like to touch on is something that Karen said about his love for her. Carolyn. So last year, this is a personal experience that I had with him that pertains to Carolyn. And so we were at Brookwood Community Center, at Brookwood Community, having lunch for Christmas, the holidays. And as we walked in, Carolyn saw this like manger, and it was like half of it was the nativity, and the other half was the resurrection. And Carolyn walked in and she said, "Oh, I love this." And she says, "I would love this for Christmas, but Harris won't buy that for me, I'm sure, And I said, "Well, why don't you ask him for it?" And she says, "Oh, he wouldn't do that." So we're eating lunch, and right in front of her, I asked her, I'm like, "Well, I could call Harris and I could tell him, but I don't have his number." And so I'm like, "Well, you give me his number." So she gives me his number. And so I took it, and then I nonchalantly then got up to go to the ladies' room. And so I go into the main area, and I call Harris. And I'm like, "Hi, Harris." And he's like, "So what do I have the pleasure of your call?" He's kind of, he was taken aback, like, "Why are you calling me?" But he was being nice. And I said, "Okay, so I am here at Brookwood Community, and your wife has just seen the most beautiful manger and gift that she would like." And he's like, "Okay." And then I said, and she would really like it for Christmas. And he's like, so is this like really a big manger or something that she can put it in the back seat of her car? And I said, no, you're missing the point. It's not that big. She can take it home, but it would mean so much to her if it came from you and you got it for her and gave it to her as a Christmas gift. Oh, well, he says, well, I can do that. And I'm like, and so I'll tell you the price. And so, I mean, I don't know if that's too much. I'm like, what would you like for me to do? I can buy it and then you pay me back, or I can have them hold it and you come and get it. And he's like, no, I'll come and get it. So I'm trying to be inconspicuous so the other ladies won't see what's going on. So I go up to the counter, I tell the lady, okay, there's a lady dining with me, her husband's coming to get this, can you put it aside so no one sees? So Sammy comes up to the counter, and another lady that's working behind the counter, she's like, oh, so do you want to, like, trying to talk to me about the manger, when is he coming? And I'm like, so we go over there, and she opens the closet, storage closet. We get in there, and I give her all the details, and I'm like, there's another lady from our Bible study class. I want to keep it private, so she'll be surprised, but he is coming today. He said he's coming. He's picking it up. Do you have to wrap it up for her? And then I called Harris, and I said, since y'all are going on vacation, you probably might want to give it to her early so she can display it. And so she did, and so I come back to church, and I'm so excited, and I'm like, did you give it to her? He goes, I'm going to wait, but yes, I'm going to give it to her. And so she was just so happy and said that this would be something that she would display in the table in her foyer year-round. And so we got to talking about that yesterday, and so he was willing to do anything for her. He just needed to know, what it is she's
He needed to
specific.
be told, like all men and husbands.
Eva, I'm just thinking that you could get a job now, just all the women coming to you saying, ask my husband for this for me.
Don't rub lunch with Eva. You're welcome.
Yesterday, through all of Carolyn's tears, she said, I don't ever remember Harris getting mad at me, but maybe one time. And we said, what was that? And she said, well, it was Candace with their first child.
Matthew.
Oh, Matthew. Matthew cried 24/7. And she was trying to get him to stop crying. She was up and down with him night after night. And I forgot what Harris said.
Just give me the baby.
Yeah, just give me the baby. And she slapped him on the arm. He said, don't do that again.
And Carolyn said, I wasn't slapping you, I wanted to slap the baby, but
Yeah.
I couldn't. Slap Harris instead.
Well, this is more about Carolyn than Harris, but I'm sure Harris cooperated. When we had COVID, I called her and told her, and she said, is there anything I can do? And I said, well, yeah, I need groceries because I'd been out of town for a week, and the milk was about to expire, and we needed chicken noodle soup. So I typed up a list, and I emailed it to her because you can't read my handwriting. And so she called me, and she said, it's pouring down raining. Do you need anything right now? And I said, no, this afternoon, this evening, I don't care when. And so sure enough, she called, and she said, it's quit raining. I'm going to the grocery store, and I will pick up your goods. And so she brought them to the house, which was really nice. And we exchanged stuff via the garage. I said, I'm opening the trunk. Just put the groceries in there. Your check is in the trunk. Pick it up. So we don't have to exchange germs. And she said, okay. So anyway, but I know that together they have a heart of gold. And it was always fun when we'd go to lunch and sit near Harris, and like you said, he had a twinkle in his eye, and he was always got a joke and just a good smile. And I just remember that. But they're such a precious couple, and they really serve the Lord with their generosity and with just their gift of helps and what have you. So we appreciate them, and I was so sorry to hear that about that today. So anyway, my heart goes out to her.
Okay, I have not been in this class that long. I guess maybe a couple of years. I don't know. And I didn't know Harrison and very before I joined this class either. I knew Carolyn, but I didn't know Harris. But a few weeks ago, Harris and I were talking. Maybe it was over at the Muttons house. We were talking. My youngest daughter's looking for a job, and he said, "What does she do?" And I told him, and he said, "I might know somebody." And I thought, "Well, that's nice. That's nice." And I'm thinking, he won't remember. Because we all say stuff like that. Yeah, I can call somebody, but you forget. And so on the following Sunday, he said, "Well, tell me what your daughter." And he called me. That's it. He called me and asked me if I to send him his Catherine's resume, so he could pass it on because he was going to talk to that woman he knows. And I said, "You bet." So I sent it to him, and he passed the information along for her. He's never met her. He knows me a little bit, but I just thought that was so kind of him to do that. And it's just a godly young man. Oh, I mean, godly man, but he's a precious man, and I appreciate him very much for that.
When I think of Harris, I think of he's just a good man. And he wanted to make other people's lives better. And he did it in so many ways that, of course, we never knew. I think about him, he just kind of flew under the radar. Now, Carolyn was quite the opposite. And that's why I think they were such a good team. And he was also, in my opinion, a servant leader. Everything he did with his heart. And I think the thing that's impressed me most about Harris's life is how naturally he's taken care of his mother. I mean, who of us would have done what they've done? And Carolyn, too, just loving Jan, just, like this is the way it's supposed to be. And, they had made a decision not to travel together anymore just so they could be at home. So one of them would be at home with Jan. And, that was something they mutually agreed on. He loved their kids, and he had a really good visit with his son. I guess it was in September when they all went. But after that trip, I think it was almost too much for Jan. But, they had a precious relationship with each other. I think she brought the fun into his life, and he probably brought the reason and the sensibility into hers. But, they were just a wonderful, wonderful couple. And I just think, when I think of that verse in Micah that says, he did justice, loved mercy, and he always walked humbly with our God. And that was Harris. So, and we will miss him.
What? I just remember, last week I come here. This is the last time I have give a hug. Harry has given a hug to me, and there's a long time. Then he asked me how everything doing. I just still remember, and he gave me anything I can feel his kind of the heart. I'm shocked. Last night I heard that the news is the same thing happened like Mark, and almost November 19 and Mark is November 17. Just same thing happened, and I just when I remember past several years since I joined this class, and every moment, is a Christmas party, my wedding celebration, whatever, in Joe, Linda house, every picture there, I can remember, Linda and Joe and Caroline and Harris is always there. Every moment, every picture, in the sofa, he give me, all the gift, I just see all the pictures still there. Every moment, their couple is there. So I'm so sorry for carrying the loss, and then I will miss him. I will tell Caroline, my heart with you. Yeah.
So many things I could say about Harris. Known him a long time, even when the difference class was the old difference class, right? And then it split and it reformed. Knew him back then, but at one time we would get together with the Delauters and them for on a monthly basis. So we got to know him pretty well, and of course love them both. But the thing about Harris is I used to always kid him about, I could remember Arthur, so I wanted to call him Arthur Harris instead of Harris, as many people do. I said his names were switched, and he needs to switch them back. But always joked with him about that, and I just saw him a couple nights ago at an event that we were both at, and some of us others did too. But he was as usual, jovial, joking. As far as I know, he never got mad. I never saw him get mad. Just a great guy. He always made you feel like you were more important when he talked to you. He didn't really care about what was going on in his life. He wanted to know what was going on in the other person's life, and that's special. I don't do that as much as I should, and a lot of us probably don't. But some people are really good at making you believe that he cares, and he did. He cared for the other person much more than you. Much more than him, I mean. But so he was special. But just having seen him a few days ago, and it's just like you never realize that the last time you saw them is going to be the last time you'll ever see them again. And I keep thinking about what could I have done different. But you don't know. It's God's timing, of course, and you can wonder why and how, but it's up to God. But it still caught me off guard and is a shock. I mean, I can remember certain deaths that were a shock to me, like John F. Kennedy. I know exactly where I was when John F. Kennedy died, and in elementary school, staring at a PA system where it came over the PA system, and that was disbelief when that happened, and it didn't seem real. And this one hit me the same way. I know exactly where I was, what I was doing when I heard it, and it just didn't seem real. Peggy texted me that he didn't make it, and I had to clarify. Well, he was in an ambulance and they didn't make it. Did that mean the ambulance had a flat tire? Does that mean the ambulance had a? I mean, I wanted to believe that, and I texted back. What do you mean he didn't make it? And she clarified what it was, and so it was difficult for me. I don't get emotional a lot, as you probably know, if you know me at all. But he left a big hole, and I'm really going to miss him. And I'm hoping Carolyn can get back in our class quickly, and will be her old self, her funny self, because she is just a great person. And I just want to see her again back in the class and directing the class. The other thing I wanted to say about the servant heart that he has, he had asked me one time to sub him for he did the greeting at the back door, and he had asked me to sub one time when he was gone, and I said, yeah, anytime you're, and I did, and I said, anytime you can't do it, I'd be happy to sub. And I said, what, which Sunday do you usually sub at? He said, all of them. All of them. And that's the way he was. He couldn't settle for one. He said he was going to go. He was all in. He was all in, and like I say, will be sorely missed. Anybody else?
I've known Harris for a short time, 3 or 4 years since we joined this class. But one of the things I will miss is, of course, his friendship and his smile. Walking in Sunday mornings, and I would immediately, Debbie and I would part ways. She would go towards the sanctuary, and I would go to the back door to say hi to him, greet him, and talk to him. And I will miss that time with him. I also fondly remember the men's breakfast where he was always there. And like Madeline said, conversations at that breakfast can go from A to Z, from up to down in every direction that you can imagine. But he always had input, and was a great person to have there participating. But most of all, his friendship and his smile. Those are the things that I will always remember.
Can you hear me? Because I speak soft and I could barely hear him. But everyone can hear me? Yes. Many, many years ago, as Mark said, we were in a different class, the difference class, and I want to say 15, maybe longer years ago. Anyway, a couple in the church, her husband died suddenly, and she needed help with her books because they were not as they should be. And so she asked myself and my daughter, do you know anyone that could help me? So, of course, he came to my mind. And so I asked him if he would help this lady. And some of you probably know who it was, Vicki Yates. Anyway, I think about after 2 years, I went to him and I apologized because there was so much for him to do. He said, that's okay, I can do it. I'm helping her, I'm getting her through. And I said, thank you so much. Is there anything I can do? He said he had it. And then the last time that I saw him, he was so jovial recently and just as happy as could be and teasing me about I could go to a car club, but I wasn't in the class. Well, I'd gone, and he came to this meeting up in LaGrange, and so that's why he was teasing me about that. But I said, well, I'm getting there. I'm going to be back. And then when I got the word yesterday that he had passed away, it came to me, this is so sad, such a loss for so many. But as I'd been told 2 years ago when my daughter-in-law's father died from COVID, Harris had done everything that God wanted him to do. And that helped me so much with knowing 2 different people on 2 different occasions told me that about my daughter-in-law's father. He had completed what God had for him to do, but I couldn't see that myself because he was such a good man, as was Harris. The salt of the earth, would do anything to help anyone and love the Lord with all his heart and his family and his friends. And it was just hard to think Harris had done everything he was supposed to do, and now he's in the presence of our Lord.
I got a phone call when this took place yesterday afternoon. I was out of town about 100 miles away, and Carolyn called me, and I was back on a country back road, and I had to stop the car. And I said,
called you. I'm sorry.
What did I say?
Carolyn.
Well, it's a private joke.
Okay.
It's a private joke. And I told her, I said, I got to stop the car. I was on a country road in the middle of muddy road, and I said, let's take a moment. I want you to I want you to make sure that I understand exactly what you're telling me. And I was just so blown away. And when I got back to Houston yesterday evening, there was emails bouncing around back and forth. And I don't always feel like I'm say the right thing sometimes, but I want to read what I read to y'all, and most of you have read it already. I said, I don't mean to lecture you, dear ones. It is so easy to grieve. We should be rejoicing. God's plan is perfect, and we can't change that. Harris is rejoicing, and we are blessed to have known this God-fearing servant man. We need to lift Carolyn and his mother up in our prayers. We all have special moments of remembrance of our one-on-one time with Harris. And I just always enjoyed visiting with him. And if I think back on that Vicki Yates deal when he took over after her husband died, if my remembrance is right, I don't think he even charged her for all the effort. And it was like 2 years of effort. And that was just out of the goodness of his heart, somebody we knew here in the church. It was a friend of ours. I will never forget Harris and Carolyn. They're precious, precious, God-fearing people. We're honored to have them as our directors in our class.
Sharon and I have been friends with Harris and Carolyn probably for over 20 years. I first met him in a men's Bible study. We were in the difference class together, so we attended a men's Bible study on Wednesdays probably for 10 or 12 years or so, and you really get to know people when you're in men's Bible studies. And then we became closer friends. Been in the difference class the whole time. We've traveled to Alaska together and fished for salmon. We've played golf at midnight in Alaska together. We've been to Vermont together. We've been to Fredericksburg together. We've been all over, and he just become a real good friend. He's my CPA. So we talk about finances, and he mostly wanted to know about church finances and what was going on here, how they work. But I wanted to know about my finances and how they were going to work. So we would talk about everything, and we'd just be driving down the road and call and say, hey, what you doing? And talk for a while. So we got to be really good friends, and Carolyn was the love of his life, and he would do anything for her. And I guess he would just about, from what I hear, do anything to help anyone because he loved the Lord. And so he was a very good friend. I'll miss him. I'll always remember him. And we need to encourage and love Carolyn the way he loved us. And I thank the Lord for him, but also, like John said, I thank the Lord that he's in the best place in the world. It's just Carolyn that's going to have to make it, and we're going to have to help her. So anyway, he loved this class, and he loved this church, and that's an important thing in a person's life. And I thank the Lord for him.
Yeah, we've known Harris and Carolyn for many years, and he always tells us about the men's lunch on the third Saturday of every month, and he said, come on out and come on out. So yesterday we had about 5 people there, and we had good fellowship and enjoyed talking on different subjects and everything, and I made the comment, well, where's our leader? And somebody said, well, he didn't make it. Well, we didn't know that in a short period of time, he's going to be standing in front of the King of Kings and Lords of Lords. And all the angels in heaven are going to be rejoicing. So it's just something that we're just going to be looking forward to. And the way this world's going, it won't be too much longer. And I'm glad that he's out of that broken body and he's going to be getting a new one.
I just realized that you're talking about Harris, and realized that he passed away. I didn't know. So my heart is broken because I met this couple a year ago when I came to this class because my husband died. And this couple helped me and prayed for me. And I feel that pray in my heart. So now my heart is broken one more time because of Harry. And I'm so sorry for this loss. I know he's in good hands, but it's painful. It's very painful. So we need to pray for his wife, Carolyn. And I'm gonna miss him a lot.
Hi, Carolyn. I always try to be humorous when times are difficult, and I've not changed. But I remember the last time I talked to Harris was Thursday evening at an event, and it was particularly interesting because he didn't have his hearing aids. Turns out the dear fella had gone into the shower wearing his hearing aids. And so Carolyn and I proceeded to have a good time at his expense. But I will miss him. Good friend, great Christian man. Carolyn, we'll be praying for you. You hang in there.
I guess like everybody in here, I just miss that presence, that strong, steady, always kind presence. And Ben and I, we drove up this morning and said, that back door. And I said, I know. It's all those little things that most of us don't think about, that we do, that Harris did. All those little things, that presence and being present for people. I had a friend on the CPA side of things. I had a friend, actually the wife of our CPA in San Antonio, and she had a friend, and this lady, she needed help. She had quite, I think, a large financial picture for herself, but she needed a Christian CPA, she said, and she went through one CPA after another in San Antonio, and she was moving to Houston. And Ann said, "Is there anybody you can think of, who could help her?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I got just the guy," and gave her Harris's number and said, "She's a lot of trouble. He may not be a friend anymore," but Harris took that on and he never complained about it anyway. So I just appreciate that, all those little things about Harris.
I got divorced back in 2013, and I was at a loss as to what to do with my finances. And so I called Harris. I knew he was a CPA, and I called him, and he took care of my taxes. I didn't have to worry about it because I don't like to worry about money. I don't like, anything about it, except to spend it. That's all I do. But I was happy because there was one year, and I don't remember what year it was, my Social Security number was compromised, and someone was out there trying to file my taxes. Somehow, I don't know how it was, but I got a letter and telling me that this was going on, and I call Harris, and I'm upset, and I was so happy when he said, "Don't worry about it, I'll take care of it." And so I just left it with him, and then it was done. I just felt like he was like a big brother to me when it came to that, because I don't know anything about that. So I'll just remember that he was there for me when I needed him. And every time tax season came up, it was like, here's my folder, and he took care of it. All I had to do was just sign it. And I know many of you probably, he was your CPA too, and you have same instances to talk about. Harris was a very busy man when it came to his job. But every time I went to pick up my paperwork, he would lead me into his office and he would ask me about my kids. And he remembered from one year to the next what I had said the year before. And he was just that interested in me as a client and as a sister in Christ. And I'll always be appreciative for that.
This will be short. I think what's been said previously is much more significant than anything that I could say, because what's been said previously have been words from the heart about how a genuine man of faith exercised his faith and touched the lives of others with the gifts that God had given him. I think that's a wonderful thing. I'm not a good mourner. 2 reasons. I'm just not built that way. I'm built more like my mother. And I deal with the facts as they are and move on. But the other reason I'm not a good mourner is much more significant. And that's this: I believe fully in my heart that Harris Arthur, under no circumstance, would want to be here today. I believe fully in my heart that he has achieved the goal that God provides for each of us, and that's to travel a finite time in this state of imperfection in order to reach the glory of perfection. We either believe that or we don't. We either claim that or we don't. We either fear death or we don't. I don't think Harris did. I don't think Carolyn does. And though there will be profound sadness, there is a gladness within the heart and soul because Harris Arthur was a true believer. So, you know, there's that old poem or story about you go into any graveyard, you see a date and another date and a dash in the middle. And what's important is the dash. I think that's a bunch of hogwash. I think they're all three very important. Because Harris Arthur, I don't know what his birth, he's about, to Roger and I were talking, he's either 70 or 71. And he was born on a specific day. What we know for sure from the scripture, and I've got them all in here, but we don't have time for me to do them, is that God had planned for Harris Arthur
in his exact human DNA makeup to be born on that day, to whom he was born for a specific purpose that he had planned. And each of us is unique in that way. We are planned by a perfect God to travel this finite path in this imperfect world for a specific reason. And of course, a part of that was to impact each of you the way he did. And a big part of that was to spend his life with Carolyn. And so I think it's important that we understand that Harris Arthur didn't happen by chance, and neither did you. And that's a pretty neat thing. Secondly, that last date, I may differ from some of you on this. The only reason there is a last date is because we sinned. God's plan wasn't there for us to have a last date. That wasn't his plan. His plan was to create man in absolute perfection and for us to exist that way until the end of time. But he did know that we would fail in that plan. And he knew that in our failure, both spiritual and physical death would occur. Now, I think God knew Harris Arthur was going to die yesterday, but I don't think he caused it. I don't think he said, "That's the end of your days, Harris. Great job." I think he said that. Because we live in a fallen and broken world, and bad things happen, sad things happen, untimely things happen. And I think God wept and is weeping for Carolyn and their children because his death was a result of our imperfection. But I also think he's rejoicing because he provided that last date is also, as someone said, a date of birth. And it's the date of his birth into that perfection of which I speak. Now, about the dash. In Psalm, I guess it's 119, it says, "I knit you in your womb, and all the days of your life, I had planned." And then in Ephesians 2:10, it says, "For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works that he has prepared in advance for us to do." That's the dash. We have two purposes on this earth, and Harris Arthur fulfilled both of them. One was to be born again into a new life with Jesus Christ. And the reason I ain't sad for Harris is because he was born. He claimed John 3:16. And he's a winner. I'm sad for Carolyn. I'm sad for their children. I'm sad that I won't, we dealt with him when he was involved with the Caponegros and us in Friends Indeed, or whatever it was called, with that goofball, Johnny, whatever his name was. And Harris had to try and keep all their books straight, and it was a total mess. And Harris finally just said, "This guy's a wacko," because Harris was direct, and he was honest, and he was straight. And I don't know all the details, but I know it was bad. Okay, but the fact of the matter is there have been story after story after story after story after story, and some that haven't been even told about how this man touched their life. And Harris Arthur claimed that, and he was born, and he was saved. But the second purpose of every life, and the only second purpose of every life, is to spend your life glorifying God in the way that he has planned for you to do so. Harris Arthur wasn't a big talker. He was a big doer. And he was confident in doing and giving the gifts and talents that God had provided him with, however he could do so. and he did it. So what I know for a fact, and we can argue all we want to about whether God caused the death or blah, 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 that's irrelevant. But what I know for a fact is that the moment, whether it was in that swimming pool or in that hospital, the moment that he passed from this sorry imperfection to that wonderful perfection, as I said, one, he would never, ever come back. Not for Carolyn, not for his kids, not for his mother. Instead, he will stand there before the throne, and when he got there, God looked at Harris Arthur and he said, "Well done. Well done, my good and faithful servant." And then he probably proceeded to go out on the steps and say, "Carolyn, I'm right here waiting on you. And it's going to be glorious." So the only other thing I would say is this. If you ain't satisfied with your dash, let this be a reminder that God has a plan, a perfect plan, and he wants us each to use our circumstances, our gifts, and our talents to his glory, as Harris, who is just as imperfect as the rest of us, so often did. The death of a loved one or a close friend makes us realize that so many of the things that we think are important are so unimportant. When I got the news yesterday, I was sitting at an A&M football game with Van and Deborah trying to figure out how to get the money to pay off Jimbo Fisher.
Did you figure it out?
Oh, I figured it out. But my immediate thought was, who cares? Who cares? What are we doing today to glorify God? And what would he have us do again to glorify God? Roger. We what?
We all have a date like him for the Lord.
Yep.
And we don't know if it's today, tomorrow, 10 years from now. Yeah. What are we doing in that dash? Are we doing something to bring glory to God?
There you go.
We need to be serious about it.
So look, the coming days are going to be difficult for Carolyn. Her children will come and they will go. And Harris's mother will still be there. But mainly, there will be such a huge hole in her heart, in her bed, in her home. And those are the times when, you know, she's going to need us. So many of you have had the privilege of knowing them so much longer than we have, but all of us need to rally around because that's what a brotherhood and a sisterhood of Christ does. And one other thing I'll say, and then we'll close, although I'm not a good mourner, you know, the one time I did have to mourn was when our little baby died, and I didn't know how to do it. And I don't know, some of you have had to mourn a lot more than I have. But I will say this. You got to let people mourn. You got to let them grieve. Because they're not grieving for Harris's soul. They're grieving for themselves and the hole that's in their heart for what they're missing. And you got to let them grieve, and you just got to let them love them. And you got to hug them. And you got to let them know that we're there. And that's what this class does. That's why I'm so humbled to be a small part of this beautiful body. All right, Wild Bill, I want you to close this thing up.
last breath, opened these eyes up, and there was Jesus. Thank you for your word. Thank you for the encouragement that we've received here today. Go with us now during this week. Help us to remember how we can be a service and a help to other people, and especially to Carolyn and her family. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.